Hey there, guys. Welcome to the Schiz and Giggles podcast. My name is Kody. I live with schizophrenia.
And my name's Kit, and I live with schizoaffective disorder.
And today we are going to be talking about the most common questions that we get about our schizophrenia and schizoaffective diagnoses. I love doing videos like this. I've done it over the years because I don't think people stop and read through our comment sections all the time. And I'll tell you right now, the comment section of a person with schizophrenia or a mental health advocate, it gets kind of nuts. And I know Kit can vouch for this. I know anyone who does this type of content can vouch for this. And there's a lot that we get asked, some really good questions, some really weird and messed up questions. And so we wrote down some of the most common ones we get. And I'm going to let Kit start. So, Kit, what is one of the most common questions you get asked?
Probably up there, it's either one or two, is people asking me what medications I take.
Oh,
And
yeah. Yep.
it's so funny to me because it's so most of the time it comes across as what meds do you take and what combo works best for you, or what meds do you
Mm-hmm.
take and what dosages. It's like they want my specific treatment protocol, almost in a way that they could, in theory, take my list and what I do and go to a doctor and get the same list and hope it works for them. And while I do talk about the medications I take on my personal channel, I do not talk about dosages, and I don't really answer that question on Instagram or TikTok, for example, because I answer it on YouTube for the most part in terms of what I take. But it always kind of it feels a little bit intrusive in a way. I really don't like seeing that comment, but it is probably one of the most common ones I get. Do you get that too, Kody?
Oh, every day. And I know that a lot of the time it's either patients or caregivers who, like you said, want to replicate it. And so I don't answer, I've never once on any platform talked about what specifically I'm on or what dosage. The only thing I say now, and this is recent, is that I'm on a long acting injection. But I won't say brand, I won't say type, stuff like that, because a lot of people forget that humans have very different brain chemistry, and what works for one person won't work for the next person. So I understand that when someone sees individuals like us who are high functioning and we have found really a lot of success in our treatment plans, people want to replicate that for themselves or loved ones. I understand that, but I feel like I'm constantly having to remind people that that's unfortunately not how it works, right? Because if there was one medication that worked this well for every single person with schizophrenia, we wouldn't need other medications. It would just be a one size fits all, and that's not realistic. That's not mental health. That's not health. So I do get that one all the time, and it's one that I'll even hear when I go to in-person events. I'll have caregivers ask me that, patients ask me that. So I've just
Oh,
had to
in person.
yeah,
Interesting.
all of the time. And so obviously I understand it doesn't come from a place of negativity or anything. It's people that want to find some of the success in recovery that we have. So I get it. But it just, unfortunately doesn't work that way.
So I guess that's my first one. What's one of the most common questions you get?
So for my very first one, I wrote down, what age were you diagnosed? Because uh, I get this one a lot from people who whenever I talk about being a high functioning kid in school, people will ask me oh, what were symptoms like in high school or middle school? Not knowing that I didn't have symptoms until I was 18 years old. So I talk about this a lot now. I started having symptoms at 18, but I wasn't formally diagnosed until 21. So that's kind of the age range that I was experiencing symptoms. That's also right in line with the most common age for men to be diagnosed and experience their first episodes of psychosis. And I don't think people realize that although it is possible, childhood schizophrenia is a pretty rare thing. It's not common. It's not something that most people experience. Most people experience schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder later in life. So that's when I don't know. Do you get that one a lot? Because you did have symptoms a little bit earlier in life and a lot earlier than the typical age range of diagnosis for women.
I think that a lot of the people that make that type of comment on my channel or my social media platforms, they do it because my diagnosis journey is kind of confusing. And I think when someone hears, oh, I was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, it's not necessarily when were you diagnosed? It was more, when did you start experiencing symptoms? That's
Yeah.
more what I get from it, because I think just my journey and how I present things can sometimes be a little confusing, because it is confusing.
Yeah.
I mean, it took me a long time to get my diagnosis, and yeah, it was that's definitely not in the same way, but I do get that question in a different way.
Yeah, we've been doing this for like 8, 9 weeks, and I'm still confused about. No, I'm just kidding.
Just give me another 50 episodes and you'll
Yeah,
know.
maybe one of these days I'll figure it out. But I'm right with you guys. I still don't get it.
Oh
No,
my
I'm just,
god! Oh my
I'm
god!
just kidding. What is your second most commonly asked question then?
So, because I hear voices as part of my disorder, and I talk about the fact that I hear voices, people ask me, "What do the voices say?" And
Yes. Yep.
oh my goodness, it's like they expect them to have some profound wisdom that I'm just keeping to myself. And in reality, it's just nonsense average talk. It's like, what am I doing? Okay, I'm talking to the voice about what I'm doing if it's there, or it's like a fleeting comment that says maybe like a sassy thing to me. There's not really too much excitement with it. And I feel like
Yep.
people, when they ask that question, they're expecting me to say some wild thing like every single time one shows up, when in reality, most of the time when they show up, it's kind of boring and I forget about it.
I get that one a lot too, and that's one that it's like I always say like they say everything and anything and yet nothing, right? Like
That's a great way to put it. Oh my goodness.
like there are times where the things my hallucinations say are like interesting, or like I've talked about on this show having a debate with one of my hallucinations about whether or not Batman was a really good guy. So like I'm not going to say I haven't had interesting conversations, but most of the time it's just like jargon or it's like meaningless talk.
Hmm.
I compare it a lot of the times to being like in a busy cafe where you're sitting next to several tables and you're semi eavesdropping without trying to, and like the conversations are pointless and have nothing to do with you. Like that's what it can be like sometimes. In addition to that, one of the things I get a lot is people ask me what I see because I have visual hallucinations. Once
Ooh.
again, expecting something like really crazy, and I've talked about this. Now my hallucinations, my visual hallucinations, are mostly just people. Like it's not anything really out of place. It's like anyone else I would see in my day to day life. It's not anyone I necessarily know. It's just people. I will say that I've talked about this too. When my symptoms started and I was using drugs, my hallucinations were a bit scarier, a bit darker, a bit more like out there. So I would hallucinate like faceless people or like what I called demons back then. Like it was, definitely different, but
Hmm.
drugs played a big role in that. Once I got diagnosed and medication, my visual hallucinations became just more like normal people in my everyday life, which is why I need coping mechanisms to identify whether or not I'm hallucinating because it can be hard to tell.
That's interesting. You say that they became more like normal people the more you got into treatment.
Yeah.
Because I would say that my voices, for the most part, are pretty neutral
Yeah.
these
Yep.
days. And they're not anything too wild. They don't scream anymore. They don't do anything that really is as distracting anymore. They're just kind of there. And then I interact with them because I always interact with them because that's how my brain works. I can't not say something to them when they're in my head.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of, I said it's kind of boring. It really
Yeah.
is kind of boring.
I
Yeah.
100% agree. I was like, a lot of the voices I hear now are conversations that if I was sitting in a cafe, I would not listen in. I would not be a part of them because it's nothing exciting. There's nothing interesting. And I will say, like, because I do have breakthrough symptoms, that can change, that can differ. But overall, it's just chatter, you know?
Hmm.
All right, so we both get that a lot, like people asking what we see, what we hear. What would you say is like one of your next top questions you get?
So this next one usually comes in the form of a long email, a long Instagram DM, or a long Instagram comment. And it's
Okay.
someone asking me, what do you say to someone who doesn't have insight? And
Yeah.
it's usually someone who knows someone in their life, whether it's a friend, a family member, and they're just not having insight into their mental illness. And they come to me and ask me, what do you say to someone like that? And I don't usually answer it because the answer is that it's basically impossible to be able to tell someone something that will give them insight into their condition. It's very difficult, and so I don't necessarily want to be the person that says that to everybody,
Yeah.
and also there, like, runs the risk of them getting upset, so I also don't answer that as well, and so that's one I get a lot, and it makes me sad whenever I do get it, because usually there's a pretty sad story that goes along with it, but that's what I would say to that question when I get it. Do you have anything different you would add?
So I actually do answer that a lot of the time because I get that question frequently. And I would say that although I do get it a lot in DMs and emails, I get that one way more in events, in person events. Like
Yes,
it'll be
yes.
a family member who walks up to me, a loved one who knows someone with schizophrenia, and especially if someone's standing there in front of me, I try to give my honest answer, which I always start by saying like you're not going to love this answer, right? Because the truth is,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like you said, you can't give someone insight. That is the unfortunate truth. What I always say is the best thing you can do is continue to be there for them, gather resources for if they get enough insight to reach out and ask for help. Do everything you can to be ready for the moment that they are able or willing to receive care. That's not the answer people want, but it is what I think is the most honest and true answer that I can give.
That's actually a pretty good response to that. I like that a lot, and
Yeah.
I might steal that
You
one.
should, because
Yeah.
as you continue to do speaking events and in-person events, you're gonna get it all of the time. So like that's the thing is I didn't answer at first because it's a tough question, and like you said, the answer isn't great. So I feel like the best thing we can do is give them hope and let them know like I always try to remind people like I was one of those people. I didn't receive care. I had no insight for several years, and now I'm the person that they're asking that question to. So I try to give people hope, like, hey, it's not ideal the answer I'm going to give you, but keep working on what you can control is essentially the answer.
Working on what you can control. I like that because a lot of things with mental illness, they have a lot of uncontrollable aspects to them.
Yeah.
And so focusing, yeah, I mean,
Life with
really,
mental illness is just kind of out of our control, unfortunately.
yeah, the train goes off the rails absolutely all the time. And that's just, yeah, it's just the reality for it.
Yep.
So, what's your next question that you get asked a lot?
So I didn't have this one listed next, but I'm going to say it next because it's playing on with yours. One of the top questions I get is, what can I do to help my loved one living with schizophrenia?
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
reason I think there's an important distinction is because this can be both people with insight and without, right? Because this can be, I'll get this from caregivers who have loved ones who have medication and treatment, and they're just early in their recovery journey. My advice is always to be patient, because whether it's someone who isn't to the point of accepting their diagnosis or medication yet, or it's someone who has medication, they have treatment, they're just not as productive as their loved one would like them to be. Because unfortunately, I see that a lot. I hear that a lot. I try to remind people that like schizophrenia isn't just the positive symptoms, it's the negative symptoms, the withdrawal, the lack of motivation, all that stuff, and it takes time. When people see me or you or other advocates living like pretty full functional independent lives, I think they forget like this didn't happen overnight, right? This took time. For me, I'm 10 years into my recovery journey now, so when I get in front of people or I get on stages and they see me, I want to constantly remind them like this wasn't a 1, 2, 3 day thing. Like we're years into this diagnosis, into this recovery. And it, once again, same with what I said with your answer. The truthful, honest answer isn't what people want to hear. And that is, it takes time. It's not going to happen overnight. And you have to be there for your loved one, but also give them the space to, really accept this diagnosis and be able to build their life, because it's hard and it's frustrating and it's not easy at first.
Yeah, my biggest advice to people with loved ones is to just have them be open to listening
Yeah. Yep.
with what's going on, because I feel like whenever I'm having really bad symptoms, just talking about it with someone I care about, usually my dad, is like that really helps me.
Yeah.
And so it's sometimes it's like almost too basic to say just listen to them. But
I
yeah.
always, the way I pose it, I'll say the same thing. I'll just say effective communication, right?
Hmm.
The best way you can help your loved one is one, to be educated, but two, to be able to effectively communicate, because a person living with schizophrenia is already having a hard enough time trying to communicate, trying to find the words for what they're experiencing. So the more that you can compensate for that will help them out a lot.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah. I like that. That's pretty good.
So what would be your next most common question you get then?
So this one is kind of a doozy, and it's actually sometimes a little bit on the rough side for me because I experience religious delusions as part of my psychosis, but it's usually someone in the comments who comes across as it's hard to explain, and it's a rough one to explain for me personally, but they'll say, "Have you tried calling on God, calling on religion, calling on a kind of spirituality to cure or heal your mental illness?" And it's always a rough thing for me because I did try that and I tried it so fervently and it didn't work. And that's not how mental illness works anyway. But it's like very frustrating to me because it's a chemical imbalance in the brain that's corrected mostly by medication. And
Yeah.
so getting a comment where someone is asking me if I've tried to call on a spiritual figure to heal my condition, it doesn't make me happy. And I'm not 100% sure why it rubs me so much the wrong way, so to speak. But I know it makes me upset when I see that comment. And so I usually don't reply to it because I don't want to engage in that kind of discussion, especially as someone who struggles with religious delusions and is an atheist because my religious delusions traumatized me.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a comment I get a lot, and I know that most of the time they mean well,
Yeah.
but it does not come across that way to me. It just comes across as something that just sends a weird ick down my spine whenever I see it.
I as someone who didn't experience religious delusions, I talk about this all of the time on my page because it very much frustrates me because a lot of the people I know have experienced religious delusions, and it is the most common type of delusion for
Mhm.
someone with psychosis. So
Yes, yes.
I always try to explain that to people. And I also want to emphasize, like, I don't care what your religion is, honestly. Like, I have no problem with whatever you practice or whatever it is you believe. But I don't think it's fair to push your religion to the point where it might
Yes,
be
this.
dangerous to others.
Yes,
And
this.
that's what I think those comments do. I actually just responded to a comment like that today. And I think it is important for me to acknowledge it because that's not something I struggled with, and it's easier for me to be able to talk about. And if I feel like if no one talks about it, people are going to continue doing it. So that one I get a lot and super frustrating. And I completely understand what you mean about just like kind of getting the ick from it. Like, it's unpleasant for everyone, and I have a lot of people who follow me, and you do too, who have schizophrenia or psychosis, who likely have struggled or suffered with religious delusions. So not only am I trying to protect myself, I'm trying to protect my audience. I'm trying to protect my peers by not allowing those comments on my page.
I've made a few shorts about it just to kind of get it off my chest.
Yep.
I've definitely done that, and that has helped, but it doesn't make the comments become less frequent.
Yeah,
And
exactly. Well,
also the comments on those videos are also a doozy.
yeah, they can get really unhinged very quickly. And for someone like you, it has to be overwhelming too because you have experienced it.
Mhm.
So like there's that whole aspect of I don't mind responding because it's not like I won't talk a lot about the delusions I dealt with because I'm not willing to revisit or relive those. So
Mhm.
I could only imagine if someone was constantly typing into my comment section every day what my delusions were, I would be so overwhelmed and frustrated. So I completely understand that. And unfortunately, I don't think those comments are going away anytime soon.
I don't think they're going away either. Absolutely not. Which, speaking of comments, Kody, what is your next top comment?
So once again, I feel like we just have a lot of correlating comments. This is not the same one, but it is similar. So a lot of people ask me, what if my schizophrenia isn't actually a mental illness, but it is some sort of gift or spiritual awakening? And this, in the same exact line as what you just said, can be really dangerous, because now not only are you suggesting that there is like a spiritual or religious component, but you're suggesting that what it's giving me is good. So if you believe that my schizophrenia is some sort of gift or some sort of ability to hear or speak to your religion's deity, you're posing that as a positive, good thing, which becomes very confusing for someone who has had delusions and psychosis and things like that. So, in the same exact breath of what we were just talking about, this can be really dangerous and really scary, I think, for a lot of people in my community. So, I try not to engage a ton with these, but I do a lot of frequent Q&As and try to address some of this without bringing too much attention to it, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And I think religion in the topic of mental illness is a multifaceted, complicated conversation.
Yeah.
And I definitely want to make it clear to the audience that what we've talked about here does not even begin to touch the iceberg that is that topic.
Nope.
And it's very complicated.
And
So,
I also want to emphasize, like, I know several people in mental health recovery and addiction recovery who use religion as a way to get through what they're experiencing. So I am not, and Kit is not in any way trying to diminish people who are
yes.
using religion or believe in whatever they believe in. We just think it's dangerous to suggest those things to people who are prone to delusions and to extreme thoughts like that, you know. So it's just more of a cautionary thing for us and our audience.
That, and I don't like it when it's forced upon me.
Yeah,
That's the other big thing, is like when it's like I don't mind what people believe for the most part. But I just don't want them forcing their beliefs on me, just like I don't force my beliefs on them.
exactly. Yeah. So yeah, that's a unfortunately one that I get a lot. So what is your next one?
So this is my last one to
Yeah.
say, and it is very specific to me specifically. I said specific twice. That was funny. Um, what is schizoaffective disorder? Is it the same as schizophrenia?
Ooh, yeah, you probably get that one a lot, because I am not a schizoaffective advocate and you are. So I'm sure you get that one every day.
I have made so many short form videos about the difference between schizophrenia and schizoaffective and bipolar disorder, because I feel like people, and I've said this like also in other parts of the podcast, other episodes I should say of the podcast, and it's like literally people will hear the schizo part and they won't hear the affective. They'll just substitute phrenia. Like
Yeah.
it happens all the time, like in conversations with people. Even people that like know I'm schizoaffective, they sometimes just still say schizophrenia, which I just find funny at this point. I don't always correct everybody. But it's kind of something that I feel like as a schizoaffective advocate, it's a question that I do need to answer. And so I usually do answer it, or I make a reel about it, or I talk about it in a video. I have multiple videos on my channel that talk about schizophrenia and schizoaffective and bipolar and how they're different, because there is a distinction between the three disorders. So it comes from a place of people being very confused, because a lot of people know what schizophrenia is and a lot of people know what bipolar is, but the schizoaffective just doesn't really have a place in the light. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do with my advocacy, is like to bring more awareness to it so that people know what it is. And I think I'm succeeding in that, which is good. But yeah, I get that question all the time. And sometimes people do not listen even beyond that. Like they'll hear about it and yeah. So I made a video like, I think it was like a few weeks ago, where I just talked about how like someone was confused by the concept of both of them, thinking that you could transition from schizophrenia to bipolar or bipolar to schizophrenia, but you can't have both. And I'm like, well, technically having both is not what schizoaffective disorder is. It's close, but it's not the quite thing. And so I do take it upon myself to explain that question to people, because that is kind of one of the biggest missions of my advocacy. But you
Yeah.
said you get it?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So I get it all the time, mostly because when I talk about my mom, I mention that she has schizoaffective disorder because that's her diagnosis. I was diagnosed with schizophrenia. I don't have mood disorder, so I don't get it as much as you do. I will say, and this is your fault, Kit. Anytime we do content together now, I do get that question a lot more than I used to. Um, so now I've also had to advocate more for schizoaffective disorder because I do content with you now, which is good because I did talk about it with my mom, and I do think it's important people know the difference. And I like because I knew schizoaffective disorder through my mom's diagnosis. I assumed that most people knew that because I learned about it at a fairly young
Oh,
age.
yeah.
So I didn't realize that people had such a hard time like understanding that they were different because I just like I learned it at a pretty young age. So
Yeah, when my doctor told me I had schizoaffective disorder, I was like, I wasn't like, what's that? That
yeah,
wasn't what I thought. But I was like, oh, that's one I haven't heard a lot about. And it's got the schizo in it. That's interesting. And so I went on PubMed that night, printed off 11 research papers talking about it, and I learned the detail in it, which is where I came up with my YouTube spiel
yeah,
about what schizoaffective disorder is, which is that it's a condition where someone experiences symptoms of schizophrenia, such as delusions and hallucinations, but also symptoms of a mood disorder, either major depression or, in my case, bipolar. That came from all of that.
yeah.
And I really hope that little spiel makes its way around the internet one day.
Yeah, it's and I think the more we do this, the more we can continue to educate people about that because it is a distinction that needs to be made. And I actually, when I was first diagnosed with schizophrenia, I assumed that I had schizoaffective disorder
Oh,
because that's what my mom has.
yeah, no, it makes sense.
So
Makes sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
so when I was diagnosed, they were like, "Yeah, you have schizophrenia," and I, without even like asking or double checking, I for like a while after my diagnosis was telling people I had schizoaffective disorder
No way!
because I didn't realize which let's be clear, most of the time I feel like it would be the opposite. People diagnosed with schizoaffective who don't know about it probably would just say they have schizophrenia because they don't know the distinction.
Oh, I get that a lot in
And
comments.
I
People
was
do
the
that, yeah.
opposite because of my mom's diagnosis. So, but yeah, that's one I get surprisingly a lot for not being a schizoaffective advocate.
I'm sorry.
It's all right. I forgive you. Uh,
What's your final comment?
So the final question that I get, and I get this one quite a bit because I talk a lot about not only schizophrenia but my passive addiction, right? And people confuse the causation correlation between my addiction and my schizophrenia. So people ask me, did drugs cause your schizophrenia diagnosis?
Oh, yeah.
This is one I get all the time. And it's frustrating that I have to answer this every few months, I feel like. But there is, a lot of people who they only think of schizophrenia or psychosis in the terminology of like drug induced. So people forget that like it is genetic. There are a lot of different environmental factors that can lead to a schizophrenia diagnosis. Yes, drug use is one of those, but I think we forget that there are a lot of ways that schizophrenia can be induced in a person, and it's not only drugs. It can be stress, it can be postpartum psychosis. Like there are a lot of things that can trigger a diagnosis of schizophrenia, and I think people only think of it in terms of addiction or drug use, and a lot of people don't realize that in my own journey, I started using drugs because of my hallucinations and delusions. So like it was actually the complete opposite for me. Schizophrenia caused my drug use and everyone assumes it's the other way around. So this is one I get a lot, but I think it's because I talk so much about being a recovering addict too.
That's got to be so frustrating too, because like the truth of your own story and what exactly happened to you. But the people out there on the internet, they don't always care to actually figure out what the real story is. They just assume.
Yeah.
And I, that's, I hate that for
I,
you.
I've literally gotten comments from people telling me that I deserve my schizophrenia because I chose to be a drug addict, not
Oh my
realizing that I
God.
started using after my diagnosis. And even if I didn't, saying that is crazy. And I get that kind of stuff all the time.
I
Wild.
am so disappointed in the internet right now.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I wish I could say that's the worst comments or questions we've ever gotten, but I feel like this is only tipping the iceberg of some
Oh,
of the stuff we've seen. Um,
yeah,
I
absolutely.
have a few honorable mentions. If you have a couple, we can throw them in here quick. The one that I wanted to mention, because this is one I get a lot, and I'm sure Kit will be able to relate to this. This is my honorable mention. Aren't schizophrenia and dissociative identity disorder the same thing?
Yes, this.
I get that question all the time. So, like, a lot of people still assume that schizophrenia is multiple personality disorder, which isn't even a diagnosis anymore. First of all, let's start there. I will
Mhm.
have people ask me on videos of me having symptoms, they're like, oh, is this multiple personality disorder? I'm like, you're so far off, I don't know where to start, right? Like, one, that's not a diagnosis. Two, it's very separate from what I'm experiencing. And I feel like movies and TV shows haven't helped this. Like, there's a lot of movies, TV shows that kind of portray them as the same thing, or like. I get a lot of people who will see a TV show character that clearly has multiple alters and think that it's a person living with schizophrenia or vice versa. So that's one I get all the time, and I wanted to clear that up. I'm going to say that a lot of times during this podcast, honestly, because no matter how many times I say it, people don't seem to get that it's two separate things.
I do get that comment as well, and I get it in a different way because I have internal auditory hallucinations, which means I hear them in the same inner headspace as you might find thoughts or an internal monologue. And
Yep.
so people actually hear that I like hear voices in that way, and they're like, "Oh no, you're just hearing alters. You're hearing disassociated parts of yourself." And I'm like, I've been diagnosed by a doctor with schizoaffective disorder, and I don't have a dissociative disorder in
Yeah.
that way. Like, I do not have DID. And it's kind of very frustrating for me because it takes a long time to explain that. And I have responded to it in the past. But DID can present itself in so many different ways that there's always someone who's telling me that I'm explaining it wrong. So I don't
Yeah.
really explain it all that much. But yeah, I get that. I get that because of the way I experience hallucinations.
And I shy away from talking too much about it because I don't know enough about it. That's like my honest, like, I have worked a little bit with some advocates with DID, but I'm not going to talk a lot about it because I don't experience it and I don't know enough about it to be able to have a really good conversation about what someone with DID goes through. Eventually, on this show, I have some DID advocate friends that I think would love to come on here and talk about the difference, right? So
Mhm.
eventually, I think we'll end up doing that too.
Yes, let's do it. So I guess I could do an honorable mention then.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Give us
Um,
your honorable mention here.
this is actually a perfect honorable mention for me. Um, I get asked sometimes whether I dyed my hair blue because of my mental illness.
Oh my God, for real?
For real, I do.
I suppose
Yeah,
that's like the internet like thing is, oh, the blue haired girls
it
with
is.
mental illness.
I
That's
didn't.
so dumb.
I literally didn't know that when I dyed my hair blue, that there was like, I did not know that at all. And so when comments started like flowing in, because I've almost had my hair blue for like a year now. And
Yeah,
so like, it's so funny to me that people like say all these things. And I'm like, okay, well, I just like, I mean, I'm going to keep my hair blue no matter what you guys say. But it's just like, I get also like comments where say blue hair checks out,
yeah.
that type of thing. And I'm just like, geez, internet, not today.
I
I'm going to
think
keep having my blue hair. Be quiet.
it's super funny you say that because I feel like that's almost a meme at this point, right? Like the
Oh,
blue haired
totally.
girl has, yeah. So I weirdly enough get something like that, not with my hair. I get that about tattoos because I'm pretty heavily tattooed neck, hand, fingers, whatever. I have a lot of exposed tattoos.
Mhm.
People will be like, oh, heavily tattooed, must be mentally ill. And I'm like, well, you're right, but not because of that. Like, that's a crazy thing to say. I
Yeah, you
mean,
get it in your own way. You do,
and it's
yeah.
hard to refute. Like, if someone's like, "Oh, blue hair, you must be mentally ill," or tattoos, you must be. It's like, well, we can't really refute it because it is true in our cases. So it's like someone else needs to refute that. But, I get that one too. So that is a good honorable mention for sure.
Yeah.
All right, well. If you guys liked this episode, let us know what other questions or comments do you get about your own diagnosis. If you are a person living with schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder, what are some questions you might have for us if we were to do another episode about this? And we would love to have your guys' input. We would love to know what kind of things you'd be interested in hearing us talk about. Kit, where can they find us if they'd like to ask us about possible topics or guests?
Well, it's great you asked because we have social media channels. On TikTok and Instagram, we are at Schiz and Giggles. That's skits like schizophrenia and spelled out, and then giggles like, well, giggles. But if you don't want to reach out on those platforms, you can also send us an email at schizandgiggles@gmail.com. And you can send guest suggestions, you can send idea suggestions. We'd love to hear from you. And even if you just want to say what you thought about this episode, like send us an email.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much again for listening. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share with all your friends. Kit, do you have any final words for the people?
Absolutely. Guys, remember, the brain is a minefield and we brought flip-flops.